This video is about the second generation of the German terrorist organization Red Army faction. The second generation was active from 1972 to 1982. It all started with the imprisonment of the first generation and ended with the capture of the second Red Army faction generation. Leading terrorists were Siegfried Haag, Christian Klar and Brigitte Monod. As mentioned, the first generation, or the core of the first generation, was in prison and parts of the left-wing scene were radicalized. But the majority of the German people strictly rejected the Red Army faction. In the left-wing scene, a different story. Some of the lefties did not only understand the terrorists, they also supported them. Now, firstly, look, where did the second generation terrorists come from? And yeah, there you have to see the Socialist Patient Collective. That's all in the area of psychiatry. These chaps said that it is wrong to conduct an individual therapy when it comes to mental illnesses, mental disorders. What you have to do is you have to cure the sick constellations of the society. And they say it's not a giant leap to find then left-wing terrorists. As mentioned before, the leaders of the Red Army faction and other terrorists were arrested in June 1972. And the counselors of these terrorists, some of them now recruited the second generation. And the main goal was the big Raushole, a German slang term for freeing prisoners. And freeing prisoners, that was at the beginning quite successful. The group Second June Movement abducted the conservative politician Peter Lorenz in Berlin, and they achieved the release of 5 terrorists. But these terrorists are not peaceful people then, out of the sudden. They actually conduct terrorist attacks and acts again. So the next time, the German government did not give in. When the Red Army faction murdered 2 diplomats and took the rest of the diplomats hostage in Stockholm, the German government said, no, we're not negotiating with terrorists. Ulrike Meinhof committed suicide, Ulrike Meinhof, the leader of the first generation, and then Siegfried Haag was arrested. German police found documents and knew something is going on, something will happen, but they didn't know what. And shortly afterwards, Brigitte Monod was released and she took over the leadership of the second generation, and she should put these plans, aforementioned plans, into action. The so-called Offensive 77 started with the murder of Attorney General Siegfried Buback and his detail. Then the CEO of Dresdner Bank, Jürgen Ponte, should be abducted. This failed, he was murdered. And now the so-called German autumn started. Hans-Martin Schleyer, the president of the Employers Association, was abducted, and the terrorists' demand was the release of their imprisoned comrades. Palestinian terrorists hijacked a Lufthansa flight and supported their comrades, their Red Army faction comrades. But Germany sent the legendary GSG-9 and all hostages were freed in Africa. The leaders of the first generation committed suicide, and tragically Hans-Martin Schleyer was also murdered. Now there are several attacks and bank robberies, but the police was more and more successful, and the RAF failed with assassinations of US generals. They couldn't kill Alexander Haig, and also they failed with the assassination of General Frederick Croessen. The majority of the Second June movement joined the Red Army faction, but more and more terrorists had enough and they could drop out and go into hiding in East Germany. Then there was a new strategy announced. Now was the pan-European anti-imperialist front, allied in alliance with the Irish Republican Army and the Basque terrorists. After the arrest of the 2 remaining leaders, Monod and Klar, it looked like the German security forces and organizations would have the upper hand. The RAF had now murdered a large number of innocent people, innocent also in the understanding of the Red Army faction. There was an identity crisis, and in conjunction with this identity crisis, the Red Army faction lost the support in the left-wing scene and was now virtually isolated in Germany. But the third generation went underground and continued terrorist campaigns. That was the second generation of the Red Army faction in 5.